On a cold night, while the town slept, a lonely house on the edge of a village sat in silence. Inside, a pregnant woman shifted in bed, feeling stronger and stronger contractions. In the room next door, an 18-month-old baby breathed deeply, unaware of everything. In the dark living room, the family's German shepherd, also about to give birth, stood up anxiously. Without barking, she stood at the baby's door and began to howl softly. The boy woke up, got up, crawled to the door, and opened it, and in the exact second she looked at him, the impossible began. Love animal stories. Then subscribe now and don't miss a thing. Thanks for following along. Now, back to our story. In the cold pre-dawn hours, while the small town of Pine Hollow, Maine slept in silence, an isolated house. On the outskirts became the setting for an unexplainable restlessness. From the outside, everything appeared calm. Lights turned off, the garden shrouded in a thin mist, and a gentle wind stirring the curtains through a slightly open window. But inside the house, something unusual was preparing to happen, something that, although initially silent, would completely change the lives of a young family. In the main bedroom, Sarah Bennett rested in her bed, 9 months pregnant, and on the verge of labor. The contractions were still spaced out, but growing in intensity. Her husband, Jack, exhausted from the rush of preparations, slept deeply in the room next door, unaware that the events of that night would become unforgettable. And in the farthest room of the house slept their baby, a boy of only 18 months, named Caleb, oblivious to the whirlwind of emotions slowly approaching. However, it was the family's German shepherd who first sensed the change. Daisy, also pregnant, had recently become more sensitive, as if carrying not only puppies in her womb, but also an ancestral wisdom that the humans around her had yet to understand. That night, while everyone slept, she rose from her corner in the living room and began roaming the house with restlessness. Something in her instinct guided her to Caleb's room. With careful steps, she positioned herself in front of the closed door and remained there for several minutes, as if listening to voices that only animals can understand. Then she began to emit a sound different from her usual one, a low, continuous howl, almost like a lament mixed with a plea. That sound cut through the silence of the dawn and echoed off the walls of the house, but softly, as if it had been created to reach only one recipient. In his crib, Caleb stirred. Still drowsy, he awoke to the sound of the howl. He sat up slowly and, in a gesture almost impossible for his age, rose and descended from the crib using nearby furniture for support. He crawled toward the door. Upon reaching the doorknob, which, until then, had always been an obstacle, something curious happened, perhaps due to how the door was just resting against the frame, or by a stroke of luck, it opened with a slight push from the little one. On the other side, Daisy observed him with steady eyes and a slight wagging of her tail, as if relieved to be heard. The child then approached the dog and, without rationally understanding what was happening, offered her a toy, his favorite, which he always held to sleep. Daisy lowered her head, touching her nose to the object as if thanking him for a valuable gift. Soon after, she turned around and walked slowly down the hallway, looking back as if asking the baby to follow her. In Sarah's room, the contractions intensified. She tried to stay calm, but felt alone and vulnerable. She didn't want to alarm Jack, believing she still had time until the right moment. But upon hearing footsteps in the hallway, her attention turned to the door. She thought she might be imagining things, perhaps just the sound of the wind or a confused dream provoked by the pain, until she saw, with eyes blurred by tears, the small shadow of her son approaching, followed by the familiar silhouette of the dog. The presence of the two disconcerted her. She tried to get up, but a wave of pain made her retreat. Caleb, as in an act of inexplicable empathy, walked up to her and sat beside her. Then he began to murmur a melody that she herself used to sing to him on the most difficult nights. Daisy lay at the foot of the bed, observing everything with serenity. The moment, although silent, carried an overwhelming symbolic weight. Time seemed suspended. The light in the room was soft, just enough to outline the faces, bodies, and feelings present there. Outside, the dawn continued, but inside the house, there was now a confluence of lives, 3 hearts beating in unison, 3 journeys intertwining. Caleb, without understanding what he was doing, was present. Daisy, guided by instinct, assumed a protective posture, and Sarah, surrounded by this improbable atmosphere, felt a new strength growing within her. But the night still held more surprises. A distant thunder signaled a change in the weather, and shortly after, a light rain began to fall. The drops hit against the window, accompanying the rhythm of what was happening inside. A nocturnal rainbow, faint but visible, formed in the water droplets accumulated on the glass, a rare phenomenon caused by the street lighting and the humidity in the air. It was as if the universe was in tune with that moment. The baby monitor camera, forgotten in a corner, recorded everything in silence. None of the adults in the house were aware they were capturing a scene that would soon captivate the world. Still, it wasn't for exposure or curiosity that it mattered, but for the purity of the connection between the 3 beings gathered there. It was an everyday miracle, the kind that happens in silence, without witnesses, but that changes entire lives. Gradually, noises upstairs awakened Jack. He descended the stairs unhurriedly, believing it was just another bathroom trip for his wife. But upon entering the room and encountering the scene before him, his legs almost gave way. His son, sitting beside his mother, looked at her with admiration. Daisy, lying like an ancestral guardian, fixed her gaze on the man as if to say, "You arrived just in time." It was impossible to understand at that moment everything that was happening, but what could be felt was too intense to be explained. The union between Sarah, Caleb, and Daisy had transcended any logical explanation. It was about instinct, about pure affection, about the sensitivity of the innocent and the silent language of love. What Jack didn't know yet was that this night would mark not only the birth of their second child, but also the awakening of a family gift that had remained dormant for generations. In the Bennett family tree, there were stories, whispered stories, passed down through generations, about children who could communicate with animals, about a special connection between the youngest family members and their loyal companions. Stories that Jack had always considered mere legends, tales invented to entertain during family gatherings. Sarah had heard these stories too, from her grandmother, who claimed to have witnessed something similar with her own brother decades ago. But like her husband, she had dismissed them as exaggerations, the kind of folklore that every family accumulates over time. Now, watching her young son and their dog in that inexplicable communion, doubt began to creep into her mind. The rain intensified outside, a spring storm that hadn't been forecast. The streams of water sliding down the windows created dancing shadows across the room, adding to the dreamlike quality of the scene. Jack approached slowly, afraid to break whatever delicate balance had been established in his absence. He placed a gentle hand on Sarah's forehead, finding it warm but not feverish. Their eyes met, and in that silent exchange was a question neither dared to voice. What exactly were they witnessing? Jack kneeled beside the bed, his hand finding Sarah's. "How long have you been having contractions?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking any louder might shatter the peculiar spell in the room. "Since midnight," Sarah admitted, wincing as another wave of pain washed over her. "I didn't want to wake you. You've been so tired lately." Jack glanced at his watch. It was nearly 4 in the morning. 4 hours. Sarah, we need to get you to the hospital. He reached for his phone on the nightstand, but as he did, a tremendous crack of thunder shook the house, followed immediately by the lights flickering and then extinguishing completely. Perfect timing, Jack muttered, using his phone's flashlight to illuminate the room. Caleb, startled by the sudden darkness and noise, began to whimper. Daisy immediately moved closer to him, pressing her warm body against his small frame in a protective gesture. Jack walked to the window and pulled back the curtain. What he saw made his stomach sink. The dirt road leading from their isolated farmhouse to the main highway was already transformed into a muddy river. The storm had arrived with an unexpected ferocity, and Pine Hollow was known for its flash floods during spring storms. "I don't think we're going anywhere tonight," he said, turning back to Sarah. "The road's completely washed out." Sarah nodded, surprisingly calm despite the circumstances. "Then we'll have to do this here," she said, her voice steady. "Call Dr. Mitchell. Tell her what's happening. Maybe she can walk us through it." Jack nodded, dialing the number of Sarah's obstetrician. As he explained their situation, his eyes never left the scene before him. His toddler son, somehow understanding the gravity of the moment, remained unusually calm beside his mother, occasionally patting her hand when she grimaced in pain. And Daisy, their loyal shepherd, maintained her vigilant post, her intelligent eyes moving between Sarah's face and the bedroom door, as if expecting, or perhaps sensing, something more to come. Dr. Mitchell's voice crackled through the phone, broken by static from the storm. "Jack, I'll try to reach you, but the emergency services are reporting multiple road closures. How far apart are her contractions?" Jack relayed the question to Sarah, who replied, "About 7 minutes now, getting stronger." "Tell her to time them carefully," Dr. Mitchell instructed. "First babies usually take their time, but second ones can come much faster. I'm going to contact the emergency services. If they can't get through by road, they might need to arrange a helicopter if the weather permits. In the meantime, I need you to gather clean towels, scissors, string or dental floss, and hot water if you still have it running." As Jack moved through the darkened house collecting supplies, guided by his phone's flashlight, he couldn't shake the feeling that something extraordinary was happening, something beyond the already miraculous event of childbirth. There was an energy in the air, an almost electric current that seemed to connect his wife, his son, and their dog in a triangle of unspoken understanding. In the kitchen, as he was boiling water on their gas stove, thankfully not dependent on electricity, he heard Daisy's distinctive bark, not her usual protective warning, but 3 short, sharp barks, the signal she used when she wanted their attention urgently. Jack rushed back to the bedroom to find Sarah breathing heavily through another contraction, clutching Caleb's small hand. The boy was singing, or rather humming, that same melody Sarah often used to soothe him. The scene would have been touching under any circumstances, but there was something almost otherworldly about it now, in the dim glow of emergency candles, and the rhythmic drumming of rain against the windows. "They're coming faster," Sarah gasped as the contraction eased. 5 minutes now. Jack swallowed hard. He had been present for Caleb's birth, but that had been in a hospital, surrounded by medical professionals, machines, and the comforting beep of monitors tracking every vital sign. This was different. This was primal, raw, and terrifying in its simplicity. As if sensing his rising panic, Daisy left her position at the foot of the bed and came to stand beside him. She nudged his hand with her wet nose, and when he looked down, he could have sworn there was reassurance in her amber eyes. "It's going to be okay," Sarah said softly, reaching for his hand. "We're going to be okay, all of us." Jack nodded, forcing a smile. "Of course we are. Dr. Mitchell is trying to get help to us, and if not, well, people have been having babies without hospitals for thousands of years, right?" But as another hour crawled by, with the storm showing no signs of abating and Sarah's contractions steadily increasing in frequency and intensity, Jack's composure began to crack. The road remained impassable, and Dr. Mitchell's last text message indicated that emergency services were overwhelmed with calls across the county. "Jack," Sarah called out after a particularly strong contraction. "There's something I need to tell you." The seriousness in her voice made him pause in his nervous pacing. "What is it? Are you feeling something different?" She shook her head, wincing as she adjusted her position on the bed. "No, it's not about the baby. It's about my family, about the stories my grandmother used to tell." Jack sat on the edge of the bed, confusion momentarily overriding his anxiety. "Stories? What stories?" Sarah took a deep breath. "Remember how I told you my grandmother claimed there was something special about the children in our family? How they could sometimes connect with animals in unusual ways?" Jack glanced at Caleb, who was now curled up against Daisy's side, both of them watching Sarah with identical expressions of attentiveness. "I remember you mentioning something, but I thought they were just family legends." "So did I," Sarah admitted. "Until tonight, Jack, look at them. Caleb is barely 18 months old. He shouldn't be able to understand what's happening, yet somehow he does. And Daisy," she trailed off as another contraction began building. Jack helped her through the breathing exercises they'd learned in their birthing classes, his mind racing with the implications of what she was suggesting. Was it possible? Could there really be some kind of supernatural bond between his son and their dog? And if so, what did it mean for their family, for the new baby about to enter the world? As the contraction subsided, Sarah continued, her voice weaker but determined. "My grandmother said it only happens in times of great need, when the family is facing something difficult or dangerous. The youngest child and the family's guardian animal form a connection. They work together to protect the family." Jack wanted to dismiss it as the ramblings of a woman in labor, the resurrection of old superstitions in a moment of stress, but he couldn't ignore what was right before his eyes. His toddler son displaying a level of awareness and empathy that seemed impossible for his age, and their German shepherd acting with an intelligence and purpose that transcended typical animal behavior. "If what you're saying is true," Jack said slowly, "then they're trying to help us through this. But Sarah, I don't see how—" His words were cut off by a sound from downstairs, the unmistakable noise of the front door opening and closing, followed by footsteps in the hallway. Jack froze, instinctively moving to place himself between his family and the door. Daisy, however, did not bark or growl as she normally would at an intruder. Instead, she wagged her tail slightly, ears perked forward in recognition. "Hello?" called a woman's voice from the darkness of the hallway. "Sarah? Jack, is anyone home?" The voice was familiar, but Jack couldn't immediately place it. Sarah, however, gasped in recognition, her face paling in the candlelight. "It can't be," she whispered, "not after all these years." The bedroom door, left slightly ajar, slowly swung open to reveal a woman silhouetted against the darkness of the hallway. As she stepped into the room, the candlelight illuminated her face, a face identical to Sarah's in every detail, yet somehow harder, more weathered by life's trials. "Emily?" Sarah's voice was barely audible, a mixture of shock and disbelief. The woman, Emily, stood frozen in the doorway, her eyes widening as she took in the scene before her. Sarah in labor, Jack poised protectively, Caleb and Daisy watching her. With curious intensity, Emily faltered, seemingly as surprised by her presence there as they were. "I don't know why I came. I was driving to Boston and got caught in the storm. I took the exit for Pine Hollow without even thinking about it. It was like like something was pulling me here. The tension in the room was palpable, a physical thing that seemed to press against Jack's chest as he looked between the identical faces of his wife and the sister-in-law he had never met. He knew the story, of course, how the twin sisters had fallen out over their grandmother's inheritance 10 years ago, a rift so deep that Emily hadn't even attended their wedding or been informed of Caleb's birth. Sarah had tried reaching out several times over the years, but her attempts at reconciliation had been met with silence. Yet here, Emily stood, dripping rainwater onto the hardwood floor, her expression a complex mixture of defiance and uncertainty. The resemblance between the sisters was uncanny, though Emily wore her hair shorter and lines of stress marked the corners of her eyes and mouth that weren't present on Sarah's face. "What are you doing here?" Jack asked, his voice more accusatory than he'd intended. The situation was surreal enough without this unexpected complication. Before Emily could answer, Sarah cried out as another contraction seized her. The sound seemed to snap Emily out of her stunned immobility. She pushed past Jack and moved to Sarah's side with the confident efficiency of someone used to medical emergencies. "How far apart are the contractions?" she asked, pressing her fingers to Sarah's wrist to check her pulse. "About 4 minutes. Now," Jack replied automatically, still trying to process Emily's sudden appearance. "Wait, how do you—" "I'm an obstetrician," Emily said without looking up, her focus entirely on Sarah. "Emergency room specialist at Boston Memorial." Jack blinked in surprise. Last he'd heard, Emily had been studying law at Harvard. "Since when?" "Since I realized I wanted to bring life into the world instead of arguing over its complications," Emily replied curtly. She turned her attention back to Sarah, whose contraction was subsiding. "Sarah, I need to check how dilated you are. Is that okay?" Sarah nodded weakly, still looking at her sister as if she might disappear at any moment. "How did you find us? We moved here after—" She trailed off, unwilling to mention the estrangement directly. Emily's hands stilled for a moment. "I don't know," she admitted. "I was on my way to a conference in Boston when the storm hit. I took the exit for Pine Hollow without even thinking about it. Then I just knew which road to take. Which house was yours?" She glanced over at Caleb and Daisy, who were watching her with identical expressions of intense curiosity. It was the strangest feeling, like I was being guided here. Guided. The word hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Jack thought of what Sarah had just been telling him about her family's legends, about children and animals forming special connections in times of need. Could it be possible that Caleb and Daisy had somehow called Emily here? The rational part of his mind rebelled against the idea, but then nothing about this night could be explained by ordinary logic. "Well, whatever the reason, you're here now," Jack said, deciding to shelve his questions for the moment. "And we need your help. The roads are washed out and emergency services can't get through." Emily nodded, her professional demeanor taking over. "I have my medical bag in the car. I need to get it." She looked at Jack. "And I'll need your help preparing for the delivery." As Jack followed Emily back downstairs, leaving Caleb and Daisy to keep Sarah company, he couldn't help but notice how the German shepherd watched Emily intently, her intelligent eyes tracking the woman's every movement. There was recognition there, despite the fact that Emily and Daisy had never met before. Another piece of the puzzle that didn't fit into any rational framework. Outside, the storm had reached a fever pitch. Wind lashed at them as they made the short dash to Emily's car, rain soaking them within seconds despite the protection of Jack's oversized umbrella. Thunder cracked overhead, and a nearby lightning strike illuminated the surrounding forest in stark, monochromatic detail. Some homecoming. Emily muttered as she retrieved a substantial medical kit from her trunk. 10 years of silence, and I show up just in time for a biblical deluge. Sarah tried to contact you, Jack said, unable to keep the defensive note from his voice. Many times. Emily's face tightened. I know, she said after a moment. I just wasn't ready to hear what she had to say. Back inside, they found Sarah breathing through another contraction, with Caleb now sitting beside her, patting her hand in an oddly mature gesture of comfort. Daisy lay at the foot of the bed, her watchful gaze shifting between Sarah and the bedroom door. Contractions are about 3 minutes apart now, Sarah reported as they entered, her voice strained but composed. And I think my water just broke. Emily immediately went into professional mode, washing her hands thoroughly in the adjoining bathroom before examining Sarah. Jack took Caleb from the bed, intending to move him to another room, but the boy squirmed in his arms, clearly distressed at the separation. He can stay, Sarah said quickly. He's been keeping me calm, him and Daisy both. Jack hesitated, not sure if a toddler should be present for the birth, but Emily nodded. It's fine. In many cultures, birth is a family affair, and there's something... She paused, looking at Caleb and Daisy with an expression Jack couldn't quite interpret. There's something special happening here. I can feel it. The next hour passed in a blur of activity. Emily directed Jack in setting up the bedroom for delivery, transforming their peaceful sanctuary into a makeshift birthing room. Clean towels were laid out, hot water prepared, and emergency lighting arranged to give Emily the best possible visibility. Throughout it all, Caleb remained unusually calm, occasionally humming his little tune whenever Sarah's pain seemed to peak. Daisy maintained her vigilant position, only moving once to retrieve a stuffed animal from Caleb's room, which she brought to the boy in what seemed like a deliberate attempt to comfort him. As Sarah's labor progressed, Emily worked with quiet efficiency, her earlier awkwardness replaced by professional confidence. Jack marveled at the transformation, seeing in Emily's focused expression the same determination that Sarah often displayed when facing challenges. You're doing great. Sarah, Emily encouraged as she checked the baby's position. Everything looks normal. The baby's head is engaged, and you're almost fully dilated. Not much longer now. Sarah nodded, sweat beading on her forehead despite the coolness of the room. I never thought you'd be the one delivering my baby, she said with a weak attempt at humor. Talk about family reunions. Something flickered across Emily's face. Regret, perhaps, or a complex emotion that had no simple name. I've delivered hundreds of babies, she said softly, but never my own niece or nephew. I didn't even know you were pregnant again. The simple statement hung in the air, a reminder of all the milestones they had missed in each other's lives. The birthdays uncelebrated, the holidays spent apart, the accumulation of small moments that constitute a shared history. It's a girl, Sarah said into the silence. We're naming her Hope. Emily's professional mask slipped for a moment, revealing naked emotion beneath. Grandma's name, she whispered. Sarah nodded, her eyes filling with tears that had nothing to do with physical pain. I thought she should be named after someone who believed in second chances. The sisters' eyes met over the swell of Sarah's belly, a decade of hurt and misunderstanding suspended between them. In that moment, with a new life poised to enter the world, the past seemed simultaneously significant and utterly trivial. Outside, the storm reached its crescendo, wind howling around the old farmhouse like a living thing. Lightning flashed in rapid succession, thunder following so quickly it seemed continuous. The power of nature unleashed, wild and uncontrollable, a mirror to the primal forces at work within the bedroom. And then, In the midst of this chaos, something extraordinary happened. Caleb, who had been sitting quietly beside his mother, suddenly stood up on the bed. His small face was solemn, his eyes unusually focused for a child so young. He placed one hand on Sarah's forehead and the other on her rounded belly and began to sing, not the wordless humming of before, but an actual melody with discernible words. The language wasn't English, nor any modern tongue that Jack recognized. It was something older, the syllables flowing together in a rhythm that seemed to match the beating of their hearts. Daisy joined in, her howl harmonizing with Caleb's singing, in a way that should have been discordant, but instead created a haunting, beautiful counterpoint. The hair on Jack's arms stood up, his skin tingling with electricity that had nothing to do with the lightning outside. Emily froze in her preparations, her eyes wide as she listened. "That's Grandma's song," she whispered, her voice barely audible, over the storm and the strange duet. The one she used to sing during thunderstorms, but how could Caleb know it? He never met her. Sarah's face reflected the same wonder, the same impossible recognition. Mum used to say it was a family protection song passed down through generations, that it was as old as our bloodline. Jack watched in amazement as the tension seemed to drain from Sarah's body, her breathing becoming more regulated despite the increasing intensity of the contractions. The atmosphere in the room shifted, the earlier anxiety replaced by a sense of profound calm and purpose. Even the storm outside seemed to respond, the wind dropping to a murmur, the thunder receding to distant rumbles. "It's time," Emily announced, her professional demeanor reasserting itself despite the inexplicable events unfolding around them. "Sarah, with the next contraction, I need you to push." Sarah nodded, reaching for Jack's hand with one of hers and Emily's with the other. The gesture bridged a decade-long divide, connecting past and present as they prepared to welcome the future. As Sarah began to push, Caleb's song grew stronger, more insistent. Daisy's howl rose and fell in perfect counterpoint. The melody filled the room, weaving around them like a protective spell, binding them together in this most primal of human experiences. And in that moment, Jack understood what Sarah had been trying to tell him earlier. There was magic in this room, not the flashy Hollywood kind, but something deeper and more fundamental. The magic of family bonds, of animal instinct, of ancient knowledge passed down through blood and bone. The kind of magic that defies rational explanation, but resonates with the truth we recognize in our deepest selves. Hope Bennett was coming into the world, called forth by her brother's song and guarded by a shepherd's devotion. And somehow, impossibly, she had managed to heal a broken sisterhood before she had even drawn her first breath. "Push, Sarah!" Emily commanded, her professional tone belied by the tears glistening in her eyes. "I can see the head." Sarah bore, down with renewed determination, Jack supporting her from behind, his arms encircling her trembling shoulders. Caleb continued his otherworldly song, his small voice unwavering despite the intensity of the moment. Daisy's harmonizing howls had softened to a gentle whine, her amber eyes fixed on Sarah with an almost human comprehension. With one final, monumental effort, Sarah pushed, and into Emily's waiting hands slid a tiny, perfect being, pink and glistening in the candlelight, her arrival announced by a robust cry that seemed to echo the thunder now retreating into the distance. "She's here," Emily announced, her voice breaking with emotion. "She's beautiful, Sarah." Jack watched through tears as Emily efficiently cleared the baby's airways and wrapped her in a clean towel. The storm outside had finally begun to abate, as if it too had been waiting for this moment of culmination. In the sudden quiet, Hope's cries were crisp and clear, a new voice adding itself to the family chorus. As Emily placed the newborn on Sarah's chest, something remarkable happened. Caleb's song ceased abruptly, and he leaned forward to peer at his new sister with intense curiosity. Daisy, too, moved closer, her wet nose gently nudging the bundle as if offering a blessing. For a moment, the four of them, mother, son, daughter, and dog, formed a tableau so perfect it seemed staged, a Renaissance painting come to life in the soft glow of emergency candles. "Look at them," Emily whispered, stepping back to stand beside Jack. "I've delivered hundreds of babies, but I've never seen anything like this." Jack could only nod, words inadequate to express the mixture of joy, awe, and lingering bewilderment that filled him. He had just witnessed the birth of his daughter, a miracle in itself, but also something he couldn't quite name, something that hovered at the edges of understanding, that challenged his rational, pragmatic worldview. The spell was broken when hope began to root against Sarah's chest, instinct guiding her to her first meal. The simple, primal act of a newborn seeking nourishment grounded the moment, bringing them back from the realm of the mysterious to the beautiful ordinariness of new life. As Sarah helped Hope latch on, Caleb finally seemed to relax, settling against his mother's side with the contented sigh of a child who has completed an important task. Daisy, too, retreated to her position at the foot of the bed, though her eyes remained fixed on the baby with vigilant attention. Emily busied herself with the necessary post-birth procedures, her movements efficient but gentle. Jack marveled at the transformation in his sister-in-law, seeing in her competent hands and compassionate eyes a different person from the angry, hurt woman Sarah had described from their last encounter a decade ago. "How did you become a doctor?" he asked as she worked. "Last we heard you were studying law." Emily's hands stilled momentarily. "I was," she confirmed. "I was halfway through my second year at Harvard Law when Grandma Hope passed away." She glanced up at Sarah. "I know you thought I was just being selfish about the inheritance, but it was never about the money." Sarah shifted Hope to a more comfortable position, her eyes never leaving her sister's face. "Then what was it about? You never gave me a chance to understand. You just disappeared." Emily finished her work and stepped back, peeling off the latex gloves she'd retrieved from her medical bag. In the ensuing silence, the only sounds were Hope's soft nursing noises and the diminishing patter of rain against the windows. "It was about the legacy," Emily finally said, her voice so low Jack had to strain to hear it. "About what Grandma told me before she went." Sarah's brow furrowed. "She spoke to you? The doctors said she was unconscious those last few days?" Emily shook her head. "Not in the hospital. Before. About 6 months before she left us." She took a deep breath, as if steeling herself for a confession. "She called me to the old house one day when you were away at that teaching conference in Chicago. Said she had something important to tell me, something she couldn't tell you yet." Jack felt Sarah tense beside him. "Why couldn't she tell me?" "Because you were pregnant with Caleb," Emily said simply. "And Grandma said the gift sometimes skips the carrier to manifest in their child." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Jack looked at Caleb, now drowsing against Sarah's side, his small face peaceful in the aftermath of his inexplicable performance. "The gift," Sarah repeated. "You mean the stories she used to tell us about the children in our family being able to communicate with animals?" Emily nodded, a hint of her old skepticism creeping into her expression. "I thought it was nonsense, to be honest. Just Grandma's dementia talking. But she was so insistent, so clear about it. She showed me the family records she'd kept hidden all those years, journals dating back to the 1700s, documenting case after case of Bennett children displaying unusual connections with animals, particularly during times of crisis or transition." She gestured toward Caleb and Daisy. Children who could understand animal languages, family pets that displayed near-human intelligence when guided by a child's intent. Grandma called it the shepherd's call, the ability to bridge the gap between human and animal consciousness. Jackie found his voice, though it came out as a hoarse whisper. "And you believed her?" Emily gave a short, humorless laugh. "Of course not. I was a rational, ambitious law student with plans to become a corporate attorney. The last thing I wanted was to be the keeper of some family fairy tale." Her expression softened as she looked at Hope, now sleeping peacefully at Sarah's breast. "But Grandma made me promise to watch over the next generation of Bennett children, to be there when the gift manifested. She said it would be my responsibility, since Sarah would be the carrier." "So what happened?" Sarah asked, the hurt of 10 years' estrangement evident in her voice. "If you promised Grandma you'd watch over my children, why did you cut me out of your life entirely?" Emily's composure faltered, her professional mask slipping to reveal the vulnerability beneath. "Because I was afraid," she admitted, the words seeming to cost her considerable effort. "Afraid that Grandma might be right, afraid of what it would mean for my neat, orderly plans, afraid of being drawn into something I couldn't control or understand." She looked down at her hands, surgeon's hands that had delivered countless babies into the world. "So I ran. I changed my major, moved across the country, became someone else entirely, someone who didn't have to deal with mystical family legacies or unexplainable phenomena." "But you became an obstetrician," Jack pointed out. "That's quite a career change from corporate law." A ghost of a smile touched Emily's lips. "Ironic, isn't it? I thought I was escaping Grandma's predictions by abandoning law, but I ended up fulfilling her wishes anyway. She always said I would help bring the gifted children into the world." She shook her head in wonder. "I told myself it was my own choice, that I was drawn to obstetrics because I wanted to be present for life's beginnings rather than sorting through its legal complications. But now I'm not so sure." The room fell silent as they all absorbed the implications of Emily's story. Outside, the storm had passed entirely, leaving in its wake the fresh, clean smell of rain-washed earth and the gentle dripping of water from the eaves. Dawn was approaching, the first grey light of morning seeping through the windows. "So what happens now?" Jack finally asked, the practical part of him reasserting itself in the face of these revelations. "Do we just accept that our son can talk to animals, that he somehow called you here tonight to help with the birth?" Emily spread her hands in a gesture of uncertainty. "I don't know. The journals Grandma showed me suggested that the gift manifests differently in each generation. Sometimes it's subtle, just an unusual affinity for animals. Other times it's more pronounced, like what we witnessed tonight." Sarah looked down at her sleeping children, her expression a mixture of wonder and concern. "Will it affect them, make them different from other children?" "According to the records, the gift is strongest in early childhood," Emily explained. "It tends to fade as they grow older and their rational minds develop. Though never entirely, they'll always have a special connection with animals, a deeper understanding than most people." Jack tried to process this information, to fit it into his understanding of the world. He was a high school science teacher, accustomed to explaining natural phenomena through the lens of chemistry and physics. Yet he couldn't deny what he had witnessed tonight. His toddler son singing in an ancient language he couldn't possibly know, their dog responding with uncanny intelligence, and his estranged sister-in-law arriving precisely when needed, guided by an inexplicable pull. "Why tonight?" he asked suddenly. "Why did the gift manifest so strongly tonight of all nights?" Emily considered the question. The journals mention that the gift is most powerful during transitions, births, deaths, important beginnings or endings, and it's often triggered by need. You were isolated by the storm, with Sarah in labor and no medical help available. She looked at Caleb with newfound respect. Somehow, he understood the danger, and he did what the Bennett children have apparently been doing for generations. He called for help, using the connection between himself and Daisy as a conduit. And you felt it, Sarah said softly. That's why you came. Emily nodded slowly. I was halfway to Boston when I felt this pull, like a voice calling my name, though I couldn't actually hear anything. I took the exit for Pine Hollow without even making a conscious decision to do so. Then I just followed my instincts. They led me here. The first ray of sunlight broke through the window, casting a golden glow across the bed where Sarah lay with her children. Daisy, sensing the change in the light, rose and stretched before padding to the window, her tail wagging gently as she observed the new day dawning. So what now? Jack repeated, feeling overwhelmed by the implications of everything they had learned. Emily looked at her sister, a decade of separation dissolving in the shared wonder of the night's events. Now, she said with quiet certainty, we do what the Bennett women have always done. We protect the children, we nurture the gift, and we keep the legacy alive. Sarah held her sister's gaze, tears welling in her eyes. Together? Emily crossed the room and took Sarah's hand, completing the circle that bound them all, sisters, husband, children, and their faithful shepherd, in a connection that transcended ordinary understanding. Together, she promised, the way it was always meant to be. 6 months had passed since the night of Hope's extraordinary birth. Spring had given way to summer, and summer now faded into the golden embrace of autumn. The Bennett farmhouse, once a place of isolation, had become a hub of renewed family connections and unexpected discoveries. Emily had extended her sabbatical from Boston Memorial indefinitely, renting a cottage just down the road from Sarah and Jack. The 10 years of estrangement between the sisters had dissolved like morning mist under the warm sun of shared purpose. They spent their days piecing together the Bennett family history, transcribing the ancient journals their grandmother had safeguarded, and documenting the increasingly remarkable behaviors of both Caleb and Hope. On this particular October afternoon, Jack returned from his teaching job to find the house unusually quiet. Following the sound of soft voices, he made his way to the sunroom at the back of the house, where a scene of domestic tranquility awaited him. Sarah sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by stacks of leather-bound journals. Emily was nearby in a rocking chair, baby Hope asleep in her arms. And in the center of the room, bathed in autumn sunlight, Caleb and Daisy were engaged in what appeared to be an intense, silent communication. How long have they been like that? Jack whispered, setting down his briefcase and joining Sarah. On the floor. About 20 minutes, Sarah replied, her voice equally soft. They've been doing this more frequently lately. Emily thinks they're preparing. Jack raised an eyebrow. Preparing for what? For tonight, Emily answered, carefully shifting Hope to her other arm. The puppies are coming. Daisy's been restless all day. Jack looked at the German shepherd, her belly swollen with impending motherhood. The veterinarian had confirmed 6 healthy puppies during their last checkup and had estimated the delivery would occur sometime this week. Apparently, Daisy had her own timeline in mind. And Caleb knows this? Jack asked, still adjusting too. The idea that his now 2-year-old son shared a unique bond with their dog. Sarah nodded, setting aside the journal she'd been reading. He's been gathering his stuffed animals in the laundry room all morning. That's where Daisy's whelping box is. He seems to think the toys will comfort her. Jack observed his son, noting the intense concentration on his small face as he gazed into Daisy's amber eyes. There was something almost ceremonial about their posture, The way they sat facing each other, foreheads nearly touching, breathing in sync, it reminded him of the night Hope was born, of Caleb's inexplicable song and Daisy's harmonizing howls. "Have you found anything in the journals about this?" he asked, gesturing toward the silent communion taking place before them, "about what happens when the gifted children are present for animal births?" Emily and Sarah exchanged a meaningful look. "Actually, yes," Emily said, her voice taking on the careful tone she used when discussing particularly surprising revelations from the Bennett family records. "There's an account from 1879, our great-great-grandmother's journal. She describes her youngest son, William, assisting with the delivery of a mare's foal during a blizzard. According to her, the boy sang to the horse throughout the birth, calming it and somehow easing its pain. There's another instance in 1923, Sarah added, pulling a journal bound in faded blue leather from the stack beside her. Great-aunt Josephine writes about her daughter Eliza helping their sheepdog deliver a litter of puppies. She says Eliza seemed to know exactly when each puppy was coming and would announce it moments before it happened. Jack ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that had become habitual when confronted with the increasingly undeniable evidence of his children's unusual abilities. 6 months ago, he might have dismissed these stories as family myths or exaggerations. But after witnessing Caleb's behavior with Daisy, the silent communications, the uncanny predictions, the way the dog responded to his unspoken requests, he could no longer maintain his skepticism. "So, we should expect some kind of assistance from Caleb tonight?" he asked, watching as his son finally broke his staring contest with Daisy and began to stroke her head gently. "I think so," Sarah replied. "Though the journals suggest each child's gift manifests differently, Caleb seems to have a particularly strong connection with Daisy, even by Bennett standards." The conversation was interrupted by Hope's sudden awakening. The baby girl's eyes flew open, and she let out a series of excited coos, her tiny hands reaching toward Caleb and Daisy. At 6 months old, Hope was already displaying signs of the Bennett gift, though in ways that differed from her brother's abilities. While Caleb communicated silently with Daisy, Hope seemed more attuned to the emotional states of animals. Birds would flock to her nursery window when she cried, singing. Until she calmed, the neighbor's typically aloof cat would appear whenever Hope was in the garden, curling protectively around her blanket. "Someone else knows what's coming," Emily observed, smiling down at her niece. "These Bennett children never cease to amaze me." As evening approached, Daisy's behavior confirmed what Caleb had apparently known all day. The German shepherd became increasingly restless, pacing between the laundry room and Caleb's bedroom, whining softly. Caleb followed her diligently, carrying stuffed animals and blankets to add to the whelping box Jack had built following the vet's instructions. By 9 o'clock, the entire family had gathered in the laundry room. Jack had transformed the space, adding comfortable cushions and soft lighting to accommodate the humans who would be witnessing the birth. Sarah sat with Hope in her lap, while Emily prepared the supplies they might need if complications arose. Caleb positioned himself directly beside the whelping box, his small hand resting on Daisy's head as she panted through the early stages of labor. "It's starting," Caleb announced with the solemn certainty that still caught Jack off guard. "Coming from a child so young. Daisy says the puppies are ready to meet us." The phrasing, Daisy says, had become familiar over the past months, though Jack still found himself wondering exactly how this communication occurred. Did Caleb hear words in his mind, see images? Or was it something more fundamental, a sharing of intention and emotion that transcended human language? Whatever the mechanism, there was no denying the results. As Daisy's labor progressed, Caleb maintained a constant connection with her, sometimes singing softly, in English now rather than the mysterious language of Hope's birth night. Sometimes, simply stroking her fur in rhythm with her breathing. The German Shepherd remained remarkably calm throughout, her trust in the small boy beside her evident in every aspect of her bearing. The first puppy arrived shortly after 10 o'clock, a robust male with a black mask like his mother's. Daisy cleaned him efficiently, then looked to Caleb as if for approval. The boy nodded solemnly. "His name is Guardian," Caleb announced, with the same certainty he displayed in all matters relating to Daisy. "He will protect Hope when she gets bigger." Jack exchanged a glance with Sarah, who shrugged slightly. They had long since agreed to follow Caleb's lead in these matters, recognizing that his understanding of Daisy's world exceeded their own. The second and third puppies followed. In quick succession, both females, one solid black and one with traditional shepherd markings. Caleb named them Shadow and Light, explaining that they were two sides of the same coin and would always work together. As midnight approached, something shifted in the atmosphere of the small room. Daisy became suddenly agitated, whining and looking at Caleb with what Jack could only interpret as distress. The boy's expression changed from serene confidence to concern. "Something's wrong," he said, his voice small but urgent. "The next puppy is stuck. Daisy's scared." Emily moved forward immediately, her medical training overriding any hesitation about interfering with the natural process. "Let me check, Caleb. Can you ask Daisy if it's okay if I help her?" Jack watched in amazement as his son seemed to confer silently with the dog, their eyes locked in communication beyond human understanding. After a moment, Caleb nodded. "She says yes, but she wants me to keep singing." As Emily prepared to assist with the difficult delivery, Caleb began to sing, not the simple lullabies he usually offered Daisy, but the same haunting melody he had performed the night of Hope's birth. The ancient Bennett family song, passed down through generations, its origins lost to time, but its power undiminished. The effect was immediate and profound. Daisy's tense body relaxed visibly, her frightened, panting, steadying into a more rhythmic pattern. Emily's capable hands worked with gentle efficiency, guided by Caleb's seemingly intuitive knowledge of what was happening inside Daisy's body. "A little to the left," he instructed at one point, and Emily adjusted her approach without questioning. How a 2-year-old could possibly know the correct obstetrical maneuver? In that moment, age and expertise seemed irrelevant. What mattered was the connection, the gift that allowed this small boy to bridge the gap between species. With one final effort from Daisy and careful assistance from Emily, the fourth puppy emerged, smaller than the others, with a distinctive white star on his chest. For a heart-stopping moment, the tiny creature lay motionless, and Jack felt a surge of preemptive grief for his son. But then Caleb placed his small hand on the puppy's chest and continued his song, the melody shifting to a more urgent rhythm. Beneath his touch, the puppy shuddered once, twice, and then drew its first breath, releasing a high-pitched squeal that filled the room. Daisy immediately began to clean her offspring with renewed vigor, while Caleb looked on with a mixture of relief and pride. "His name is Miracle," the boy announced, and no one in the room could find reason to disagree. The final 2 puppies arrived without complication, a male and female that Caleb named Wisdom and Joy. As dawn approached, Daisy lay exhausted but content, her 6 puppies nursing vigorously, while the Bennett family looked on in varying states of wonder and exhaustion. "Well," Jack said, breaking the reverent silence that had fallen over the room, "I guess we're going to need a bigger house." Sarah laughed, leaning against his shoulder. "Actually," she began, with the tentative tone that had become familiar over the past few months, the voice she used when broaching subjects related to the Bennett legacy. The journals suggest that the puppies born to a dog bonded with a gifted child have specific purposes. They're not just ordinary pets. Jack raised an eyebrow. Let me guess. Each one is destined for something special? Emily nodded, cradling a now sleeping Hope in her arms. According to the records, these puppies will form their own bonds, some with other Bennett children, some with people who need the particular qualities they possess. Jack looked at the 6 tiny forms nursing at Daisy's side, then at his son, who had finally succumbed to exhaustion and was sleeping curled against the mother dog's back. The scene should have been simply sweet. A boy and his dog, new life, entering the world. Instead, it felt weighted with significance, part of a tapestry being woven across generations. So what you're saying, he said slowly, is that these puppies are going to connect our family to others, to spread the Bennett gift beyond our immediate circle. Sarah nodded, her expression solemn. The journals describe it as extending the shepherd's call. Each generation of Bennett children calls their animal partners, who in turn call others to join the circle. It's how the gift has survived for centuries, adapting to each new era. Jack considered this, watching the gentle rise and fall of his son's chest as he slept beside Daisy. 6 months ago, he had been a science teacher with a pregnant wife, a toddler son, and a family dog, living an ordinary life grounded in the rational world of observable facts. Now he found himself the guardian of an ancient family legacy, father to 2 children with abilities that defied scientific explanation. Yet somehow it didn't feel like his world had been turned upside down. Rather, it was as if a veil had been lifted, revealing deeper patterns and connections that had always existed beneath the surface of ordinary reality. The Bennett gift hadn't changed his children. It had simply allowed him to see them more clearly, to understand the unique way they perceived and interacted with the world. So what happens next? He asked, echoing the question he had posed 6 months earlier on the night that had changed everything. Emily smiled, her earlier academic skepticism long since replaced by wholehearted acceptance of the Bennett legacy. Next, we watch and learn. We help Caleb and Hope understand their gifts. We document their experiences for future generations. And most importantly, she added, her voice softening as she looked at her sleeping niece and nephew, we let them lead us into a world that's much more magical than we ever imagined. As if on cue, Miracle, the tiny puppy that Caleb had called back from the threshold, lifted his head and released a miniature howl, a sound so perfectly timed it seemed to punctuate Emily's words. Daisy responded with a gentle lick, while Caleb, still deep in slumber, smiled as if sharing a private joke. Sarah laughed, the sound bright and clear in the early morning light. I think that's Miracle's way of agreeing with you. Outside, the first rays of sunlight broke over the horizon, casting long shadows across the Bennett farmhouse. In the maple tree nearest the window, a cardinal began to sing, its bright voice heralding the new day. And somewhere in the distance, beyond the range of human hearing but perhaps not beyond the reach of the Bennett gift, other animals answered, a chorus of acknowledgement, a network of consciousness extending far beyond the boundaries of the small room where a family had witnessed magic disguised as ordinary life. The shepherd's call had been sounded once again, echoing across generations. And in its wake came the most powerful magic of all, the magic of family reconnected, of ancient wisdom remembered, and of love that transcended the boundaries between species. For in the end, that was the true heart of the Bennett legacy, not the ability to speak with animals, but the wisdom to listen to all living things with an open heart. As Jack looked around at his extraordinary family, his wife, her Once estranged sister, their gifted children, and the dogs that had brought them all together, he felt a profound sense of rightness. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever mysteries the Bennett gift might still reveal, they would face them, together, guided by the unspoken language of love that connected them all. In the laundry room of an ordinary farmhouse, as autumn sunlight spilled across the floor and a family welcomed new life into the world, the circle remained unbroken. The shepherd's call continued, passing from generation to generation, from heart to heart, a timeless melody in an ever-changing world. Dear listeners, we hope that the story of the Bennett family has touched your hearts. To continue this emotional journey, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories. Find it by clicking to your left. If you enjoyed this tale of family connection and mysterious gifts, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give the video a thumbs up. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of life and the magical connections that bind us together. Don't miss our upcoming content where we'll explore more extraordinary families and their special gifts. We look forward to reading your thoughts in the comments.